It's fill or kill time. It's 3rd of February, and Ed Matz is here with me. It's post some football game thing, and
How to
before
make friends and influence people. You,
yeah.
you do yourself to so many people when you. I know you do it tongue in cheek when you take the mickey out of soccer or even American football.
But do you want to hear? So for people who don't know what you're talking about, I've taken a few times. I've said that or I made fun of football or football. Well, it's football on both sides of the Atlantic, and a lot of people get pissed off from this. But my point is just I want to use my mental energy on other things than sports. And I had a proof of this weekend where my parents were visiting and I was watching skiing. And I could feel like how much I got emotionally involved just by this like one time. So I'm like focusing my energy
On cross
on.
country skiing as well.
No, it's exciting. It was sprinting. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, no, it is. I've watched it. I think I replied to you at the time that anyone who's had 5 kids and sat at 6 o'clock in the morning watching Trans World Sport, I've seen every sport there is, including beach volleyball,
Yeah.
cross country skiing
But
as well. But
you watched the football game?
again, you have to define that. Arsenal beat Crystal Palace, squeaked through. It's always a nervous moment for me being a Gooner.
The other football game.
The other one, the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're talking to a Bears fan. I luckily spent a whole season watching the Bears, so yeah, I like American football. It's a great sport. In fact, I played. I love sports. You'll get me started off completely the wrong subject.
No.
I used to play. I still do play. I go running. Try to go running as much as possible. But I played quite a bit of tennis. Played last night. I always play these young Turks who want to hit me off the court, which is fine. They never realize they can beat me by drop shotting, so I can just hit the ball and I can burn some energy in the excesses of the week out that way. But I love, I love sport. I love American football and soccer, and it's kind of. I think being healthy, being fit is quite important. A healthy mind comes from a healthy body. So I think sport and trading do go hand in hand as a discipline, as an approach, physical approach together. But I also think there's some analogies from a trading perspective, which is what I wanted to talk about today. But yes, I saw some of it. I was a bit busy,
Yeah.
but it was great. Yeah,
I have one question before we go into sports, because something happened this morning in Japan, and it's an interesting point, maybe, or boring, maybe. So Nikkei entered correction, over 10% correction year to date. Do you care about these sorts of things?
Yeah, I'm long, Nick. I say, yeah, I care. Do I care? Yeah, but I'm long from 2011, so it's a kind of long-term position.
Yeah.
So
Oh
yeah,
yeah, but then you're way up.
Uh,
So no, I'm just wondering if this is this an indicator that matters, or is it just good for headlines?
Nikkei, no, it's very important. Sorry, because there's a whole correlation basket going on here between the Nikkei. Just whack up. I mean, it's a shame you sprung that one on me, because if you put up a Nikkei and a dollar yen or yen charts, you'll see that they've been moving in sync. And what has been what is also interesting is the Nikkei is as part of the risk basket is actually also correlating. I think it's correlating with some lags and leads with the S&Ps as well. So I actually think the Nikkei is a bit worrying. Not, I don't think. Well, it might be worrying the real short term um, to people, but I think it's supported here. But my question is more what it's going to do. Probably the next after. I think it will recover. I think all the markets are set to recover. And today's an
Yeah.
opportunity. I've seen saying that for a week now, but it keeps rallying and dead cat bounces and coming back. Nikkei's pushed a bit lower.
Put up a chart of Nikkei and dollar yen.
Okay, yeah,
2 year chart.
yeah.
Any particular you want?
No, that's fine. I mean, it's been nice to overlay. You can see they're moving in sync.
Yeah.
Um,
If you
and
can't see the chart, turn on
the
720p, please.
dollar yen is lagging the Nikkei today.
Yeah. It seems that they did separate a little bit about a year ago. So
No, they didn't.
okay.
They might look it on your chart, but they
Okay.
didn't. They've been taking turns which one's leading the other, and it looks like arguably the Nikkei's leading dollar yen on the
Yeah.
day. But it's related to has an impact. It's sort of correlating with the other markets as well.
Yeah.
Um, but the other markets look arguably safer. You know, I think take something like the DAX. I mean, DAX, I think is personally I'm buying into this. I would like to squeeze it down one more time. Friday was kind of one of those typical things. Friday was an opportunity to lighten on Wall Street. It was funny because we were talking before about how not only did about this experience, this incident on Friday when I was finished for the day, market was ticking up, I was done, I was upstairs setting up for we have a film night. In fact, I watched Rush. It was pretty cool.
Was it good?
Yeah, really good film. I'd recommend that. It was more interesting because it's being billed as James Hunt's the story of James Hunt. It was a story more about Niki Lauda, in my opinion, or their rivalry. But anyway, set up for that, and then I saw where the Wall Street was. It was just below 15,800. And so I thought, oh, this looks toppish. It's on a Friday and a close. People aren't going to want to hold this. So I sold it and whack. I don't know who was doing what. I think someone was playing around with a wire on a DVD player, but whatever. I had a power cut.
Oh, yeah?
And then the next thing I know is Vinci got it back up, everything running, because I wasn't expecting the trade. And the Dow was 30 points lower. So as a result, I closed my position out. Thank you very much, and then I closed it out. And then this morning, on that particular computer, it was on my laptop that I move around the house. I opened it up, I pressed the button, opened it up, and it cached. And my position was still there, the one I closed out, and it was showing me how much I would have made had I run that position. And it's just all right, fine, thank you. Maybe I shouldn't have watched the film. Maybe I should have, spent the whole weekend worrying about position in order to make, 150 points, whatever, rather than 50 points. But that's not the point. The point is, I took a trade for a good reason and it worked. Had a good risk return, and thank you very much. I can bag it, move on to the next trade.
Yeah.
That's kind of is also a theme of today, because it's not just about sports, but it's being able to see that you're in it for the long run.
Yeah. I have an analogy I want to run by you in that. Do you know the speech from that Any Given Sunday, when he talks about that's a game of inches, and it's like, yes, you missed that big move, and it's annoying because you see what you would have made, but don't you think that the real way you make your dues as a trader is by winning in the game of inches? You take an inch at a time. You never go for a yard at a time. You always go for an inch at a time. You know what I mean?
We've kind of alluded to that before. I believe in diversification, of risk, not just in markets, but also time spans and also types of trade. I trade a lot of. I trade quite a few of the indices short term because I regard it as a bread and butter. There's no. I might be wrong, but I can still make 30 points trading here and there and everywhere, and that just is one element of my trading. So that would be my inches, and whereas at the same time I may be trading around an attempt at a home run. It's either way. It's a long innings, and there's lots of ways in sport and in trading of being successful. You can either, you can go for the home run, or you can just sneak all the time. It's just, or you can go for the bomb, or since the Super Bowl yesterday, or in fact, if you want to talk about the first few minutes, you can go for a safety.
Yeah.
Which is it's all about what your system gives you strengths for and what you're good at. And if you're good at defense, like Seattle clearly were yesterday, then you can make some money. But you can also, in that case, they kind of set the whole game up for themselves by that start. But also it's just different ways of making money and taking opportunities. And I believe in trying to diversify, because that way, if I'm wrong on one market, which I am on the yen at the moment, I have been wrong, then there's plenty of other similar markets I'm doing really well at. Euro, for example, has broken down just to stop people coming back up. Cable, the same thing. All these markets, Aussie actually going the other way. There are other opportunities, different perspectives, different time perspectives, different ways of making money, skinning the same cat, if you like. And at the end of the day, when you put it all in a melting pot, the idea is obviously to be making money slowly but surely, because it is a slow process. I mean, that's
So I put out the first quote you sent me today. It's quite fitting for what you just talked about, from Paul Tudor Jones.
Do you want to read it out?
I sure can. The most important rule of trading is to play good defense, not great offense.
Yeah. I was kind of saying two things there. One is that point about preserving your capital. First and foremost, worry about protecting your capital, because if you take a hit, take a loss, then it's harder to regain. It's one of those obvious things, but people forget it's harder to make the money back than it is to lose it in the first place. So preserve your capital first and foremost. Assess what type of risk is out there in the trade you're taking and whether the probabilities are in your favor. First and foremost, protect your capital. And the other thing is, from a defense point of view, is you're just going to be solid and pick the moments. If you go all out in every market, you think it's going up there, it's going down there. You're going to trade this, going to trade that. Well, hey, today may not be the day. It's a great offense actually requires a great defense to give you the confidence to do it in the first place. So today coming in, it looked like the DAX, for example, again, a market I trade particularly in the mornings. I focus. People realize this or notice this, but I focus on markets like DAX first thing in the morning, and currencies. I focus on currencies all the time, but also then come the afternoon, the DAX typically slows up and just does what Wall Street, or used to do what Wall Street does, not anymore, and then focus on Wall Street, and that way, I'm looking for various opportunities, but what I'm trying to do is pick my moments, and it all comes back to the same point about being solid and waiting for the opportunities. And it's funny how a lot of these people talk in terms of sporting analogies. Put up there's a Warren Buffett.
Yes, sorry.
A Warren Buffett quote there.
Do you want me to read it? To integrate a little bit here. In this game, the market has to keep pitching, but you don't have to swing. You can just stand there with the bat on your shoulder for 6 months until you get a fat pitch.
Yeah, which is... That's right. The market's always pitching. There's always opportunities in a market, and they vary. And you don't have to swing. Now, if you're say a spot trader in a bank, and your job is to trade Eurodollar, and someone phones up or whatever, doesn't phone up, but you've got a position given to you, then you have to swing. You can manage your way out of it, etc. But in terms of, because he's more of an investor, but even from a trader like myself, is I trade short term, but I tend more to be a swing trader. Then I don't have to swing. I can wait for the moments, and occasionally there is that the fat pitch. There is the big one, and people will know if they follow me. Certainly on Market Vision TV, a trade we took called the fat pitch trade. I called it the fat pitch trade intentionally on dollar Canada, because for me it was once in almost a generational trade, once in a 10-year opportunity for dollar Canada to do something special. And you don't need to trade dollar Canada. A lot of people found it difficult because it's quite erratic. It is quite clearly. I've got a great chart, 250-year chart on dollar Canada. You won't get it from there. Because it's way beyond the scope of any trading horizon, 250 years, showing that there's a long-term equilibrium point of parity. So why would you ever want to stick and hold a position away from parity? Because it will come back, and it will. But every now and then it does something major. What I've called a paradigm shift, which is why we've got the fat pitch trade.
Yeah.
So
And
I
this
mean,
is
and
your.
then it's
By the
taken
way, you
directly
should
from
promote your service a little bit more. Guys,
Yeah,
I'm putting it up
yeah.
here. This
That's
is
very
just a
kind of you,
promo
but
video.
what
No, but you
is?
should. I mean, you don't have to like hawk it all the time, but I'm just showing one of the video. So I think it's a great service. You don't talk about it nearly enough, I think. So
Yeah, but that's the nature. I'm a trader, not a salesman. People might disagree with that, but that's not my,
there you go. There you
But
are.
I believe
Double.
again I believe in diversifying what I do in terms of my revenue streams, in terms of my perspectives,
Yeah.
in terms of my trading as well. If you go back, move on to the next. There's another Warren Buffett quote about baseball,
Yes. There you go.
which I think is quite ironic in many ways. You want to read that out as well?
The stock market is a no-called strike game. You don't have to swing at everything. You can wait for your pitch. The problem when you're a money manager is that your fans keep yelling, swing, you bum." Sorry. No, that's a great quote actually.
Yeah, and it's slightly. Why is it in character? Slightly out of character, but I think it's funny how. Well, I don't know what it's like to work, obviously, for Warren Buffett, but he's a very shrewd guy. But we talked before about people with money. It's easy to be shrewd. It's easy to give money when you. I actually tweeted something to that effect. Oh, I took the great. What's his name? The Wolf on Wall Street quote. I just love that. On the weekend, I saw that film as well. I wasn't going to see it, but my son insisted I saw it because my wife was away, whatever. And it's about money can buy you a better life, can buy you cars, great cars, buy you a few other things as well. But actually, money can make you a better person because it allows you to give generously to good causes. And if you're, which is very true, it is true, which is says so many things as well, quite nastily patronizing as well. But when you're Warren Buffett, you can do that, and it's a great position. Good for him. Good for him that he's able to do what he does. But he's also in a position now where he doesn't necessarily have to swing because he sits back and waits for his opportunities. Whereas a lot of people out there, they start trading, and there's quite a few people I know on Twitter, for example, who have to swing because if they don't swing, they can't pay their rent.
Yeah.
And so it's nice to hear people like Warren Buffett, clever people, who've done well, pontificate and say some interesting things, but they're often a step away from reality.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting. I never heard anyone say anything negative about his quotes, and I'm not saying it's negative, but it is kind of easy to sit there after 40-something years of returns and just talk about how great you are. But the reality of the fact is that Warren Buffett hasn't had great returns in the last 10 odd years, and most of his returns came like many money managers in the past.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean that may be the case. Berkshire Hathaway seems to be doing all right. He seems to, money breeds money.
Yeah.
When the U.S. government turns around and says, "Do you want to buy some of these assets? They're cheap. We need you to buy them," and he goes and buys them, and lo and behold, the market does recover, and he's been given a great opportunity to buy something very cheap. Then, money buys money. Money buys position, and money buys you. It's kind of like that mantra I use: trading from strength. If you're trading from strength, then it gives you greater opportunities. If you're able to sit back and not chase markets, you don't have to trade euro dollar. You don't have to, get your rent today. Then you don't need to trade today. But even in the course of any one day, there's going to be an opportunity later. That is one thing I've noticed, particularly on Twitter and particularly in the retail market, is a desire everything's here and now. Like in the market, it's the euro's breaking down. It must be here and now. And lo and behold, it doesn't go down, and it goes sideways for a day, and it's not, the view of it going down isn't necessarily wrong. It's just it didn't have to be here and now. The fact that something's not going up doesn't necessarily mean it's going down. Again, talking about Paul Tudor Jones, I quoted him on the weekend as well, saying markets only trend for 15% of the time. They go sideways for 85% of the time. Even if a market's in trend, it will sit there, and then it will trend only for short periods, and then consolidate again, moving from one equilibrium point to another. And if you look at volume charts, you'll see that a lot of the volumes of business goes through in consolidation periods, people anticipating the next move rather than the moves themselves, because they happen so quickly. And that's where I think, I love sport, but I think personally I found sport so helpful to me in a number of ways. One is the stamina, physical stamina. One is the mental stamina as well. In any one game you can be losing and know that you've got a chance later to get that back, and you keep plugging away and you keep plugging. The game's not finished until the final whistle, so it gives you a determination and perspective. But it also knows that there'll be times when you don't play well, when you don't trade well. But that doesn't mean you're a bad trader or a bad sportsman. It's just look at Torres. Went for pretty much a whole season without scoring a goal. That's a bit harsh, but great player, great forward. He's a Chelsea guy, so I'm not going to praise, and ex-Liverpool, so I'm not going to praise him too much. But he went through a really sticky patch, but he came good in the end. And it didn't, the fact you don't score a goal today or this month doesn't mean you're not a great striker. It just means you just need to maintain belief, which is what he did. It was quite clear that he just stuck to it, and people backed him.
Yeah.
And he came through. And the same with trading. If you've got a system that performs well, then unless the fundamentals of the market are so different in a sustained period that it's going to undermine your model, then the chances are it's just a blip, and that you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You don't need to rethink. If, however, you think the conditions, let's say your model is based on indicators that do well in ranging markets, and yet you go through a period of sustained trend. Let's say you're a yen trader and you're making a killing when it's below 80 because it was doing nothing, and then suddenly breaks into trend and you're losing money. But also, not only are you losing money, but your model is wrong because it's in a trending market. Then in those instances, you need to rethink what you're doing. And the hard thing is to recognize, is it still a trending market? Obviously, all these things are easier to say than do, but it's maintaining perspective that you are a good player, that your model is right, or you're maybe time to hang up your boots and your model isn't right and you need a new model. Maybe they needed to get rid of Suarez. That was a bit of ironic tongue-in-cheek comment. Or Torres even, but they stuck with him and he's come good. And it's a long haul, and I think that's one thing sport teaches you.
An interesting point what you're making about Torres and footballers in general, because I think that footballers, it's such a mental game. And they're all about equally skilled athletes, but the one thing that can really differentiate them is how their mind works. And first of all, I guess you just have to not think so much and trying to act on muscle memory, but sometimes that's harder than it seems. But also you have to use a little bit untraditional methods. So I want to bring up a chart here on your left. It's a chart of EM flow, and it's from Bank of America via Structured Research. And I just find it interesting that to use flow as a contrarian indicator. How do you like to use these things? Because I don't hear you talk about stuff like flow ever, so I'm just like, again, I'm springing it a little bit on you, but extreme
Well, I
flow.
use flows. No, I do believe in flows, very much so. It's all part of sentiment, but it's also where you are within a trend. When you get real flows, when you get people taking money out of the market, they're not going to put it back. That's a real flow. And so I'm really interested in in what I describe as real money. I mean, money is money, but in that instance, it's the real flows, because they highlight an underlying fundamental trend quite often. As to why I don't speak about them, because I know full well there are people. Well, sometimes it's confidential information. Working in banks, I remember on many occasions seeing serious flows, but you'd be in serious trouble also if you go and tell someone specifically that someone was doing something else, putting through trades through. Sometimes no problem.
Can you elaborate on this?
Goldman, I mean, remember one of the best trades I never did was because Goldman Sachs sold a yard of dollars in dollar yen, and I was buying right at the time. Someone said, you just don't do that. Goldman are selling a yard, and I was this I'm not gonna say where I was working in a bank, and I didn't do the trade. And what happened? later that day, it was a big figure higher. Because was that a flow? No. I mean, I imagine it was Goldman on the. One assumed it was on the back of a real trade, a real flow, maybe some sort of bond adjustment or whatever. But in actual fact, I think it was just they were having a punt, and they were wrong. And
That's
as a consequence, I was wrong because I didn't do it. But
Yeah.
I'm sure
That's
they've
interesting.
made many successful trades
But
since.
how much flow information do you have now? I don't know when this was, but I
Well, that's
know.
another reason you don't talk. I wouldn't talk because I'm not privy to that information all the time, and therefore I get asymmetric information.
Yeah. No, you're right about that. This is more interesting than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, no, but if that's an aggregate, if it's accurate, then it's useful. Well, my problem is when someone says, in that instance, Goldman is selling a yard, someone else could be buying 2 yards or buying a yard, neutralizes it, and the person buying is buying for really good sound reasons that they're going to hold. I mean, it's not having, it's always a balance in how much information you have. And if you don't think you can get all the information accurately, then you start to question whether you should rely on it as an information stream in itself. And I tend not to for that reason, because if I chased, by the time I hear, it was a time when I was trading interbank or whatever, but, Citibank surrounded by brokers and good brokers also, giving some good tips as what's going on, then, you knew you were one of the first people to hear. By the time I hear it now in what I do, it's if I've heard it, then the chances are not everyone else has heard it, but
Yeah.
it's late. There are some exceptions to that. I had a whole thing about the Swiss franc going back. There was some good information flows on the Swiss franc about before the peg, during that process, the intervention process, which was really useful. So you can get some information streams that are interesting and helpful, but you've got to trust the source, and not, there's loads of good stories from people like Jesse Livermore about tips, people running in and tips, don't follow them.
Do you ever follow tips? Ever?
What I do with tips, Ferry, is if someone comes up with a tips, or it's like being tweeted a chart, I'll look at it, take a view, and some will be gems. Someone we talked about on Friday, wasn't it? Singapore dollar. Something I looked at a while back, and I hadn't looked at it recently. But that's a gem. That's a tip.
Yeah.
I think that's worth looking at, worth following. I think it's a great trade out there for the next, during the course of the next year.
Yeah.
Let's try and think of an example. A more recent example. I can't think of a more recent bad example. People come up with some ideas all the time. For me, I don't want to hear someone's view. I want reasons for their view.
Yeah, exactly.
Their views and opinions are to a penny. Good reasons for a good view.
That brings us actually quite elegantly, by accident or by design, into your next quote from a person I have never heard of before.
I'll be honest, I haven't
Glickenhaus.
heard of him either, but and it's a bit surprising because Seth Glickenhaus,
That's a
he
funny name.
runs or ran his own shop.
Yeah.
Clearly, he's been around a few years.
Yeah.
But isn't that great? Look, I mean, I don't know how old he is there, but he's clearly had a background where he hasn't had computers to deal with, but he comes in, probably his walking stick and his hobbling along in his nice light coloured suit, and sits down and still trading. Yeah, I mean, what does that tell
Beautiful.
you? It tells you this guy's got
Oh, I love
stamina.
this quote here, and I mean, this guy is clearly, and he's right about it. You make money by being very selective and being patient, waiting for those opportunities that are irresistible, where the percentages are very heavily in your favor, and I think it's brilliant
Yeah.
advice.
Yeah, it is. That's why I wanted to use it. It's one of my favourite quotes of all time, if you like, because he's talking about a number of things, about the opportunities that do. You're talking about playing great offence, but it comes from being great defence, sitting there, waiting, holding off, looking for your opportunity. You can't make the American football analogy so well, but something like in football you can, or in rugby, you wait for the moment, you create the opportunity with the overlap in rugby. You tie the packs in, you keep going to the corners, you leave the pitch wide open, and then you've got your extra man at the end for your overlap. You wait, you create that moment, and you wait for the right opportunity. And you're doing it from a position of strength. You're not chasing around saying that we need to try and score every minute of the day. You do that in the last, like England were on the weekend, England-France game. Well, in fact, France were, because they needed to catch up, and they won in the end, unfortunately. I thought England deserved to win that, but that's beside the point. But Seth is making a good point. You trade from strength. Try and trade from strength. Even during the day, there will be times when when you're forcing it. Never force a trade, even as a day trader, even as a scalper. It's just, you wait for the opportunity. Even very, very short term, kind of not trading from the seat of your pants, almost by nose, when you see and sense people are bailing out. That's the time to say thank you. That's the weak stops. That's the time to enter a short-term trade, which may also, if it coincides with a longer-term view, be the time to enter a longer-term trade. So it's using, the opportunities that are out there, identifying them before they happen. But even if it's part of your plan, even as it happens during a day, it's kind of there are opportunities. Well, just because you haven't planned it doesn't necessarily mean it's not an opportunity in the real short term. Yeah.
But this is, I find this to be deeply interesting and also very frustrating part of trading as a profession or as a full-time gig, is how different it is from almost everything else you do. Because in a very real sense, you spend about, it takes about a second to finish a trade or to open or close a trade. And it's so easy. And it's so incredibly easy to overtrade, especially a big move.
Especially since, someone like Seth Glicken, and also Warren Buffett, given their perspectives, given their background, it's very easy to sit and do nothing. Because that's their background, that's their experience. Because you got to talk. These guys started when there weren't computers, even. Well, that's a bit harsh, but even trading computers, and certainly people didn't trade on the internet. And now with the internet, it's just a button away, and I can risk everything with one button, and having the discipline not to get overexcited. And that's the hard thing. Again, I haven't really explained the defense point well enough. Paul Tudor Jones playing great defense. It is, anyone who's given up smoking like I did and still don't smoke will realize that it's not about 90%. It's the 0.001% of the time when you're tempted. That's when you screw up. The same with trading. It's to have defense against your own temptations, own emotions. Most people, I've been there. And most people, when they screw up, it's not often, even they blow their account. It's not because they're consistently bad. It's because one moment they lacked discipline. They were caught up in the moment, or were caught up in the larger moment and made some bad decisions, and then refused to accept they were bad decisions. You compound one mistake with another. But if you don't start making that mistake by jumping in at the wrong time, by maintaining your discipline 100% of the time, then you can play great defense. And then it gives you a good position to be, to play the great offense and make the trades that make money. And it's the 0.0001% of the time you have to watch, not the 10%.
That's brilliant. I never heard anyone make that comparison. Quitting smoking and trading is very similar.
Well, this is, trading is draws on so many things in life. It's so deep. It's so penetrating emotionally, so penetrating intellectually. I find it that way. It is immensely penetrating that I rely on other things from other walks of life, even politics and stuff like that. I use quite a bit from and just how I trade, but particularly sport.
Yeah.
And it's just a question. So I'm strong enough and able enough to identify the opportunities and take them when I can. It's like one market today, which is kind of interesting. I've been waiting to do something for a while. Can you put up a final chart?
There you go.
Yeah.
Aussie.
This baby, this you see, this is something I've looked at for months. It's a Aussie and gold, but they're not moving together. For gold led Aussie down. The aggressive breakdown through 93.80 on Aussie was a lag on gold. Gold already broke down through 13.80. That's fun. I never even thought about that. No, in fact, it was higher, wasn't it? But gold led Aussie down, and then they've started switching around, and then Aussie's now leading gold again. Sorry, gold is leading Aussie. And so we've seen the rally in gold. We've seen gold stabilize, and Aussie's been stayed weak. Now, what we've seen today in the last 24, 48 hours of trading is this chart. You see? Can you see the Aussie's white matching what gold did? What gold did last year, actually. There's a big enough difference. Over a month's 598 hours difference between those two charts. Amazing, isn't it? I think it's amazing. It's all part of fractals, fractal correlations. But what it's saying for me is that Aussie's got a chance to rally on the back of gold, what gold did a month ago. Explain that one away. Explain why, are the Chinese, whoever really seriously punt the Aussie, are they actually eventually realizing there's a correlation with gold, and they think finally that gold is supported and gold isn't falling down anymore? So they decide to get out of not just being gold short, or they started buying gold. They start realizing, well, Aussie's associated, we'll buy it at the same time. Is that how it works? I doubt it. So why is Aussie lagging gold by over a month?
So you think this is a 3-year bottom for the Aussie?
No, I don't think that at all.
Oh, then I misunderstood.
No, I don't think that at all. But I think Aussie's there's a punt on the upside. Well, that's what my book says. It's a good trade, against the lows. We're looking at quite a few trades, I think, against the lows today. Okay, here we go. Just while we've been talking, the DAX is ticking down. On DAX, similar again to the New York Open trade, the TikTok first hour. If you can get Wall Street again to push lower and then fade and rally. Mondays is always a good day for a turn. Friday, Mondays. In fact, to the extent the first of anything tends to be quite a good time for a turn. When someone has something to do, they'll move a market because they may have decided that they seriously want to be invested in gold in Australia or whatever, and therefore do it first off. In fact, something I've got out of the habit of doing. I'll tweet a chart of what the euro likes to do in the beginning of the month. That's kind of an interesting perspective. Or what it likes to do in February is even more interesting. It's got a particular propensity to do certain things in February which are worth looking out for. But so what I'm looking for today down is another attempt on the downside, and see that fail, and see a few markets adjust. In terms of any fat pitches out there is a fat pitch. And it's one I've taken already, swing at a fat pitch, and it's Euro Sterling. Euro Sterling, I think, I've done a video on it today called The Last Opportunity, ? I have to find it. What's a good sporting analogy equivalent for UK version of the fat pitch?
Well, it's Andy Murray versus, what's his name, the Swiss guy?
Roger Federer or Wawrinka.
Yeah, Federer.
Wawrinka, I can't say that guy's name. I don't. Yeah. How long's Federer going to last? How much longer is he going to play? Do you follow tennis? I love tennis. No, no, I don't think. I think the English analogy it's got to be cricket. Yeah. I mean, forget 2020. We're talking about a Jeffrey boycott moment. Like it's 5 minutes later, and.
Oops.
I'm going to have to take that, yeah. See if I get a call on that.
Should I mute you?
Yeah, cricket, yeah, waiting for the full toss. That's what it's about. Jeffrey Boycott waiting for a full toss and taking a single and hogging the strike. That's probably more likely the Euro Sterling fat pitch analogy, but Euro Sterling could be something special.
But did you watch the show before with Live Squawk?
No, I didn't. Sorry.
Yeah, pretty similar. He rounded off by saying watching the Sterling as well. It's interesting.
There's something else actually. There's something else potentially very, very sexy on cable,
Yeah,
which is yeah, it's kind of it's like it's the right opportunity. Sometimes you can see something that could happen, but you don't know. You don't really trust it. You don't think the probability is stacked too much in your favor. But how do you trade that? It's waiting for the fat pitch. It's not a fat pitch. The probability isn't right, but you can see something there. And how you trade it? Well, you try and you time it right, you get your risk returns right, and then you just build up some P&L on the back of it, so you can say, what the heck, it doesn't matter if it doesn't work out. It's a potential home run, a potential fat pitch. I'm going to invest in it because if you can take 10 fat pitches trades in 1 year, well, let's say 12, and 3 of them will come off and the other 9 don't. But if you make more than 4-1 on each trade, on the ones that make, you're up. I know there are people who look continually for fat pitches to the extent they take 80% losses, but when they make big. I can't trade that way. That puts me too much under emotional pressure, knowing that if you don't make any serious money in the first 9 months of the year, then what strain does that put you on if you've got to find a big one? I don't also trade year to year in that sense, but if you've got 3 months and you're down on the year and you've got to find a big, you start putting yourself in a position of weakness where you've got to start swinging, even if the pitches are too good. And you might connect, you might not, you might absolutely bury yourself. Not for me. I don't trade that way. I try to identify and I anticipate some big moves and trade them accordingly and improve the risk return on them. Some of them come off, some of them don't. But it's identifying the right opportunities at the right moments for the right reasons. Easy to say, much harder to do. But Warren Buffett, Seth Glickenhaus, Paul Tudor Jones, they all did that. And how did they do it? Because they played great defense. Right, I need to get that call. So.
Yeah, that was brilliant, and I love the tie-in of the sports. It's a nice little theme for the show.
Yeah, well, I love sport, so it's easy to talk about sport. Not necessarily very well, but if you talk about something you love, it's easily done.
So we're going to be doing our research show in about half an hour, so if you want to tune in, then we're going to be
on. If you like, let me, I can come back, but I need to, there's a reason, fine. There's something, if I get a call on that phone, there's something.
Okay.
I need to go.
Okay.
Cheers.
Thanks, Ed. So